Good evening and welcome to another episode of The Lion's Den. My name's Toby Bennett from Black Crow Gaming, and today I am going to be deploying some of your armies on particular maps that people have requested. So, in the earlier episode this week, I asked if people could send me over some lists that they've thought of post data slate, what terrain they're looking to play on, and then I've gone through how I might deploy on those terrain sets. So we've got 7 maps to go through, so it's going to be a reasonably long time, but I think equally we will hopefully see some of the same things coming up multiple times. Because the kind of the logic is there for a lot of these, particularly on the certain maps, on like how you will get to certain positions, and that hopefully should be kind of cross terrain, which should show that the general information that you get from lots of different places, like that should kind of amalgamate to be useful in some way, but equally if you can find content that's specific for the terrain that you're going to be playing on, be that GW, WTC or UKTC, that is very useful. So, we're going to start off with this list. Now, this list is in Gladius detachment, and it is 3 Landspeeder Vengeances, a Thunderstrike, the Lion, Combi Lieutenant, 2 units of Scouts, a unit of Deathwing Knights, some Infiltrators, ICCs, and 2 Deathwing Knights. And this is on Games Workshop terrain. So as I mentioned, in Gladius. So we're going to go from the bottom. So it's on Crucible of Battle. And I've started off with the Lion is in quite an aggressive position, but behind that ruin so that he can look to pressure our opponent's expansion objective early if I so choose, or I can redeploy him quite easily by up and downing him. Now, the reason that I'm liking the Lion in quite an aggressive way is it pulls our opponent into certain positions on the battlefield where then we can really punish them with our guns. So if you look here in particular, where the Lion could push forward, it's going to open up our opponent so that then suddenly they're in front of all of the Vengeances. If our Vengeance is in the top left-hand corner, move towards that centre and then are covered from the other flank coming directly towards them by that ruin in the centre, they'll be able to pound fire directly into the units that our opponent comes to secure their expansion with. So it just gives us those options to be able to deal with units that might come out and kill the Lion, and for the most part that's probably going to be things like elite infantry that are just like either really good at shooting or really good in combat, maybe less so combat just given his fights first. But there's lots of different ways that your opponent might try and deal with him, but then as long as it's in front of those guns that can really punish it, you're going to be in a good spot afterwards, even if you do end up losing the Lion. But it causes your opponent some caution. If they take the bait and go for the Lion, they could just bounce off that 3-up invuln. And if they do manage to take the Lion down, they're going to be severely punished. And you're then controlling the pace of the battle already with those Deathwing Knights in reserve, where you can then potentially look to drop them in a key area and just overload your opponent. So we've got our speeders just all in kind of positions where they can take up gun lines and fight from the back. I really like the speeders, but they are quite squishy because they're either T9 or T8 depending on which one it is. So obviously the Storm Speeder 9 and the Land Speeder is 8. As I say, they are very squishy. In Stormlance, they're a little bit more durable because you can give them -1 to hit and wound. In Gladius, they don't have that. So you need to be particularly cautious with them. But equally, with that AP3 gun, you can really hurt your opponent with the strip cover stratagem. And particularly if you go to AP4, we've seen how impactful Redemptors can be with their AP4 macro plasma. But AP4 ignoring cover, very, very nice. So something to bear in mind with those Vengeances, but I think you want to use all of that 36-inch range. Just keep yourself nice and safe as possible. We're going to look to use Azrael and the ICCs to push up and secure that expansion objective. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of this unit. I think it's just a little bit too squishy for what it does, but equally, it does have the power to really shift any unit that comes into it. And if you spike 4-ups, you spike 4-ups. Hopefully you'll be able to distract enough towards the Lion and towards the Deathwing Knights that will either be going towards the centre or their expansion, that then you'll be able to sort of secure your expansion in a reasonably safe manner. And either it will be Azrael and his ICCs that will sit on there, or some Vengeances will push up and end up sitting on there. So that's actually kind of quite a quick review of that. I mean, we've got some scouts in the middle. Now, they're always going to be in a position where they can just nip back behind a wall if you're going second, or potentially push up a little bit further if you're going first, just to give you those options. Make sure you can take those positive positions and sort of slingshot your way forward, or you can get comfortably nice and safe, depending on what's going to happen. And then obviously we've got infiltrators chilling at the back, making sure that our opponent's not dropping in on our home objective. And when you deploy them, make sure that you're stringing them out and really using that kind of like makeshift L as efficiently as possible. Because that L is really nice just for keeping, like really putting that unit out there and making sure we're denying as much as possible. I quite like this army. Again, the only thing I would change is around the ICCs and Azrael. I'm not sure how I'd fully rejig it. I do really like the triple Vengeance with Thunderstrike. 3 might be overkill with the Thunderstrike. It might be 2 that are better, but that third redundancy that could then go elsewhere, not too bad. So overall, I like this on GW. There's some good lanes that you can really abuse that 36 inches on. And yeah, I think it's an overall really nice list. Good survivability, good number of units to activate, and it's got a very clear battle plan going forwards. So next we're on to the WTC terrain, and we are in Stormlance now. So we have got 3 Deathwing Knights, classically in the middle, getting ready to run straight down our opponent's throat. Then we have got some Outriders with Samael on the bottom flank, alongside a Vengeance behind them to take up those gun lanes of going either left or right, as in like that, for it, because then it can either shoot either of those lanes, and it's quite nice to be able to either put fire into your opponent's expansion objective, or to put fire just straight down the centre or across the middle. Really gives you that flexibility where you need it. And then those JPIs just a nice and skirmish. Outriders with Samael will hopefully secure that objective. Got some intercessors at the back. We've got another Vengeance. Now the Vengeance, I'm not sure if I've done this quite right, because I positioned it quite far at the back. But that's to either take that central line and use that 36 inches and just threaten your opponent from moving forward, or it can push out to your expansion and use that line of where your opponent might try and stage and push through, so that you can really secure that expansion, ideally with the Lion, and then once the Lion's able to push through, covered from the Vengeance, Azrael and his Assault Intercessors can then line up and secure that. We've got the Combi Lieutenant just over there, just nice and hidden and safe behind those containers, so that he can always try and loan up the Lion. WTC, I really like the Lion on. I think he would probably quite happily dominate this flank, and I think the fact that you're forcing your opponent to deploy, I mean, they've kind of got to go for the middle, because if they don't, you're going to get 3 Deathwing Knights. They're going to secure that middle, and then either they're going to go for their home, or they're going to push up or push down, depending on how the battle's going. And that's really going to allow you to dictate the pace of that battle. And remember the whole time that you're pounding shots with those Vengeances. The only slight criticism I'd have of this list is that there's not much in terms of long range, or at least ranged damage dealers. So there's nothing that could say combine to really put damage into a knight at range, or I'm just trying to think of some other examples, but those kinds of durable targets that you don't want to charge, and that ideally you will shoot and take down. There's not those range threats. Obviously the LSV could do it, but equally it's only strength 9. It is twin link, which is really good, but it's not so good into T10 plus. But overall, I think that's quite a small criticism, and I think the way that WTC works, you will be able to kind of get up into your opponent's face reasonably swiftly and apply that pressure. So overall, again, really nice list, so thank you for that. Then we're going to go to UKTC, which is what I'm prepping for at the moment. Now, this is Mission 3, but this is the same deployment and map setup as Mission 5, and they are both sort of very much around securing objectives, because obviously this one is hidden supplies, you can see from the extra objective, and the other is take and hold. Now, this one, again, I believe is in Gladius. Oh, no, actually, sorry, this one's in Wrath of the Rock. Yeah, this one's in Wrath of the Rock. and we've got 3 units of Deathwing Knights, so very tasty. So we're going to do my normal of putting one of those unit of Deathwing Knights in reserve and setting up to threaten that rapid ingress, especially when they can do it for free, which is very, very nice. We've got a Predator Annihilator, or as the gentleman that sent it to me, a Pred Anal. So I think he might have got done dirty by autocorrect there, but what you're typing, sir, maybe we need to come check your hard drive. But equally, you've made a fun list, so that's cool. Then we've got Azrael with some Stern Guard, again for that advanced shoot and not have to use the stratagem, which is good. We've got some JPIs that can go and swiftly support the Combi Lieutenant that will secure our expansion objective. We've got some intercessors or infiltrators. Can't quite see what it says down here from where I am. It will be bigger on your screen. But you've got the infiltrators or intercessors on home objective. They are, again, much of a muchness. Infiltrators are kind of a bit nicer on search and destroy because they just make sure that your entire deployment zone is covered. Which is very, very useful and very nice. Then we've got an ATV just to kind of maybe go skirmish with our opponent on their expansion objective, get in the way of them pushing out from their deployment zone onto their objective. And then the Lion and Deathwing Knights are in the centre with the Scouts ready to start putting the hurt on. Because I feel like if you can kind of secure that centre, secure your expansion, and then if your opponent does just start piling up in their expansion objective, okay, like they get 5 points a turn, but you're comfortably getting 15 if you're securing all of that, and trying to dislodge 15 Deathwing Knights with -1 to wound in the Lion, that's going to be particularly difficult. And Azrael and the Predator just sort of give you that coverage to be able to put a little bit more range stacker in and secure your expansion while still putting pressure down on your opponent. Because if that Predator gets all the way to your expansion objective and starts shooting into their deployment zone, it can be quite punishing as well. So overall, really nice list. I like it. I do think overall that Wrath of the Rock is maybe a little bit too slow for UKTC. But equally, I like the way that this list is set up. If you want to play Deathwing Knights, this is a nice way of doing it on UKTC. At this point, are Deathwing Knights worth it? Maybe. They're maybe awesome, or maybe they're not. It's a really difficult one to say for UKTC. We know for WTC that they're definitely there, and they're definitely really, really good. But these maps for UKTC are a lot more open, which is quite funny because I thought it was a little bit more like WTC when they came out. I was wrong. I was really wrong. But equally, you know, it's got all of those key elements of that long range, that survivability, that ability to pressure your opponent. So, you know, I like where this list is going. Next, we're going to go into another WTC list. So this is another Gladius list. So this is an interesting one actually because we've got a standard captain with assault intercessors with the Honor Venom, which often we don't see out of Dark Angels, but it's another kind of like missile unit that can go and cause your opponent a lot of difficulties. So, and I think, you know, there's also that element that you've already got Az. Putting a captain in there then gives you another free strat, and we know that with Gladius they do really have like an absolute glut of incredible stratagems. So I'm a big fan of the way that this little addition. I think it's quite nice. Usually I go for the Gravis captain with RT armor in that kind of slot because he's just super survivable. I call him the Catan captain because he's like a 90-point Catan, which is brilliant. But I do quite like this particular build. So, again, we've got Triple Vengeance, and we are seeing a lot of Triple Vengeance lists. I do think they are ever so slightly worse on WTC because they can't sort of really leverage that that range as much. And I think if you are going Triple Vengeance or Double Vengeance, which I think is probably better on WTC if you are playing Vengeances, I'm not sure I am personally, then I think you need to be in Stormlance, so you can give them that -1 to hit, -1 to wound, because otherwise you are in real trouble. Because you will have to be quite close, although you can do that kind of danger close support so that they take the shots instead of a unit of infantry that's maybe holding an objective, because your opponent doesn't want to shoot that infantry unit and kill them before it kills the Vengeance, because otherwise the Vengeance gets to shoot back. So there's a couple of different things there that might play into it, but I think Vengeances are overall a little bit worse on WTC. But we've got 3 of them, and this map I actually kind of like for the lines. You can take up that centre line, you can zip out over to your expansion objective and start getting some pain down into your opponent's home objective potentially. It's quite an aggressive move, depending on what they're going to be throwing onto your expansion. That might be quite difficult. The line going into their expansion might end up actually being incorrect, and the lion sort of needs to secure your expansion. So that's something to test to really see what's best there. Couple of Deathwing Knights just to bomb it down the middle, secure that central objective, kind of just be a real pain in the arse. And then we've got a Thunderstrike, again, just sort of sitting in that centre so that it can quite happily get to either of those central lines, and then it can put pressure on and support either of the Vengeance pushes, which I think is quite useful. And then finally, we've just got some intercessors sitting on home, JPIs to go and secure that expansion. We've already spoken about the captain. I quite like him skirmishing their expansion objective. He's 11 OC in that unit because he's got assault ints. He wants to be fighting on objectives. He's not overly survivable, but equally the Lion will really support with that, especially when suddenly you can throw that captain in. He's not with Sternguard, so you don't need to support him with Oath, and then suddenly he's hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s without Oath, and then full rerolling to wound because of the ability on the objective. So, giving yourself some Oaths redundancy I think is really nice, especially when you are putting Vengeances in, because they are D6 plus 1 shots. They do really demand those hits hitting, so having that reroll is really quite important for them. So, we're back to another GW list. This is Search and Destroy. Now, I believe this list is Stormlance. I want to say Stormlance. I think it's Stormlance. I got sent a lot of lists. So, again, this is a really nice map. Search and Destroy. So, again, a good setup for Deathwing Knights and things like that. We like Search and Destroy as combat armies. We've got multiple Vengeances again, so I've deployed all 3, so 1 Vengeance in the middle, and then 1 on each flank. Now, the Vengeance in the top left-hand corner, I think that one could maybe be a bit of a damp squib, but equally that's to kind of come in and support that lieutenant, just make sure that you've got your expansion objectives secured and you can start putting that pressure down. Those JPIs are kind of there just if you need to push them that way as well, but ideally the Lion, the big brick of Ravenwing Command Squad, which is the 9 bikes, and then the other Vengeance will just sort of look to threaten that middle after the scouts sort of do a little bit of skirmishing on it. And then in the bottom corner, we've got another squad of JPIs just to go and secure that objective, get a shot for the Vengeance, and then Semi-L to clean up and push up and around to turn that flank. Again, overall, a nice list. I think there's definitely, like, the Lion being able to hold that central objective while still being lone-opt, I think is very, very useful. So you would need to work to keep some infantry alive near him. I like the Vengeances. There's definitely some lines where they can use that 36 inches to the maximum ability. But I think there's also enough cover that you can kind of bully around. And then we've got some Deathwing Knights in reserve just to kind of be a little bit more reactive. But the likelihood is that they're going to push in on your expansion objective, but like maybe a little bit more aggressively, just to, expansion objective / middle, just to sort of keep that pressure up and stop your opponent from being able to really like turn your flank there. But overall, again, nice list, good amount of power. Does still have the same criticism that it will struggle to kill some heavier targets at range. So that again is worth bearing in mind. But overall, really nice list. I do like it. Next, we have got another UKTC mission. So this is either mission 2 or mission 4. So this can be Purge the Foe, or it can be Linchpin. Luckily, they changed the Linchpin mission. Very, very useful. So we have got a unit, an army. A unit? An army. This one is in Stormlance, I want to say. Pretty sure that's Stormlance. or it could be Gladius. It's one of the two. I think it's probably Stormlance. It's got 2 Redemptors in it, 3 Vengeances, a Thunderstrike, some Infiltrators, some Intercessors, the Lion, Combi Lieutenant, Scouts, Azrael and Assault Intercessors, and that's the army. So it is all in on Plasma. It's really all in on Plasma. Now, what I've done is I've got the Lieutenant on my opponent's expansion objective. Not on it, obviously, just behind that building, with the Lions sort of chasing up to then have that fights first threat that can sit on their objective with 4 OC and go, come and have a go if you think you're hard enough. Followed by that, we've got 2 Vengeances, nice and quick. If your opponent doesn't have that much shooting, get more aggressive with that deployment. If you can get those early lanes for shooting turn 1, you will be very, very happy because you can put so much hurt on your opponent if you have that speed. This map is very, very open. So look for where you can get that. You can use and abuse that speed to get early shots into your opponent. Scouts in the middle, pretty self-explanatory, just screening so the DWK can move up quite happily. The T-Strike is looking to maybe secure your expansion objective and then use that firing lane. There's just not the best positioning on that far flank. Like, you can't hide very much down in that L because so much of it is out of your deployment zone. So it might be that you actually can't fully hide that Redemptor, so it is a little bit more vulnerable, but it's also a little bit of a bait because obviously Redemptors can be extremely survivable. And also some armies just won't be able to punish it. So it's definitely worth bearing in mind, but there is some amount of risk applied to that. I've got my Infiltrators just sort of chilling at the back to screen more than actually, because they don't need to hold the home objective because we can sticky it with the Intercessors. The Intercessors will then push middle because if you can sticky that middle objective, particularly on Linchpin, game is over. It will just allow you to keep pushing and you will get your opponent. We've got a Redemptor that can push the middle, but it can also push that firing lane straight in front of it. Which is quite useful. Just again, keep your opponent honest, get some plasma in their face. We've already spoken about the Vengeances and the Lion, but I really like this. You know, there's a lot of DACA that you're sort of throwing out into your opponent, and I think that's kind of the secret sauce to this. I think you want to really be punishing your opponent with fast firing lanes on UKTC. And to be honest, I've always loved Deathwing Knights on this particular setup. I've played against World Eaters and Death Guard on this one at Super Majors. The Death Guard one was tough because it was triple Plague Burst Crawler, Morty's Hammer before the nerfs, but the Deathwing Knights held out. And that was what mattered because it allowed me to charge his home objective, start really sort of bullying him around all over the board. Bloody Challenger cards nearly made it a 10-10, but I just about managed to get the win. And then I tabled World Eaters just because he tried to hit my Deathwing Knights. My Deathwing Knights kind of just went, no, and then hit a lot harder back because they do hit quite well into Zerkers, which is really good to note because I think we are going to see a lot more World Eaters now that we've just had that change where those Exalted 8-bound are looking real tasty. And then we will go on to the final map, which is another little GW one. Now, this is Dawn of War, and I wanted to do this one because I absolutely hate Dawn of War. I think it's a really crap way of playing the game. And the one that we saw out of UKTC was a real big miss, unfortunately. They were doing Dawn of War Linchpin, which there was no cover in the centre. There's no cover in the centre here. But equally, I think you can do Linchpin on this one, which is a bit nasty because nothing's holding that centre objective in Linchpin. But you can also do Purge the Foe on this, I think. So Purge would be a little bit better because hold one, hold more, kill one, kill more. It's a little bit more efficient. But again, you can see those scouts sort of skirmishing in no man's land, but they can get safe if you're going second. Get them safe behind walls. You don't want to just chuck away those units if you can avoid it. They're still 70 points. Then we've got lots and lots of guns because this is in Company of Hunters, which I really quite like. So the gentleman that sent it to me said, I've got the Lion in here. I'm not sure if it's actually that conducive to the strategy. And I'm like, no, 100%. This is super conducive. All of my Company of Hunters lists have had the line in because he can advance up with that gun line and then he covers it with heroic intervention. And you can really put the pressure on because if someone wants to try and rush you, you're just able to kind of outmaneuver them and then abuse that fights first bullying Primarch. Where if they come at you quick, you can come at them harder and you can always redeploy your units, which is very, very useful. I think Company of Hunters is looking very, very nice. This has got a couple of indicators that I really like. So we've put one vindicator on each flank just to kind of push up, get behind those buildings and then push over, get into your opponent's expansion objective. Well, I mean, they're both kind of expansion objectives there in no man's land. And then they've got a nice crossfire into the centre and your opponent's not going to be able to sort of hold any of those objectives and you can look to secure, hold more. Then we got triple vengeance. So you see two vengeances on the right-hand flank, and I think that's just because that nice big line down going from the top left corner to the bottom right, I think the vengeances can really benefit from that. We've got a Ravenwing command squad that looks like it's got its dick in the wind. Now, that command squad does have the Scout 8 enhancement, so with that, we'll get them into that position so that they can go up and behind that wall, so they can be nice and safe from return fire, which is why it's quite important to get those scouts down first so you can secure that so your opponent can't scout block you. And then the other Ravenwing command squad with 3 Outriders is just chilling in reserves because they can come in a turn earlier with the Master of Maneuver stratagem. Again, everyone loves vengeances. Everyone really loves vengeances. There's also a T-Strike in here, which is a little bit safer, but because it's got that fast speed, it can get to the other side of the ruin that it's sitting next to and get that long gun lane. But I don't think your opponent's going to give you that long gun lane too often. So, you know, if you can just sort of position it so either it's then got shots into the expansions, because sitting behind that ruin, the smaller one in the middle, it's got really good lanes into both your expansion and their expansion, and it can really support those both Vindicators and Vengeances. So overall, really like this list. Intercessors, again, sticky home. Do you need that? Did you just have spare 80 points? I think there's an argument maybe you go with Incursors. Did I change that from Incursors? I think I changed that from Incursors, and now I'm realising why the guy did it, because you can sticky with the stratagem. Is that worth it? Yeah, probably. The only thing I don't like about this list is the lack of Azrael. And I know that Company of Hunters has overall worse stratagems, but we're already thinking about spending, if we do switch to those Incursors, we're already immediately spending that on the sticky Hunter's Instinct, and then that's going to really limit what we can spend on like the +1 to wound into infantry characters, or the -1 to hit, and then Armor of Contempt for the Lion, because like I always want to basically hold up Armor of Contempt for the Lion so that anything like AP2 is just he's just going to save on 2s still, because that tends to be what comes at him. So if he can do that, be nice and safe. That's what I aim to do. But yeah, overall it's a nice list. I do think it is lacking but overall very tasty. And again, triple vengeance. I like that, especially the only thing, and I had to check this and I was a little bit disappointed. Vengeances don't have deep strike. They're the only speeder, I think maybe apart from the Dark Shroud, that doesn't have deep strike. But these little guys would be so much better if they did, because suddenly, especially in Company of Hunters, that was actually, I think, the final straw for me and why I didn't go for Company of Hunters, because at first I was like, oh, Company of Hunters, we just pick up land speed of vengeances and just deep strike them anywhere on the board. Suddenly they've got plasma. We're basically doing it like, obviously not 6 inches, but like we're kind of using them a little bit like Inceptors. Like, that's really nice. But it's not really working that way, unfortunately, because they don't have deep strike. Can't use that redeploy to its full ability. Yes, I think on UKTC there's definitely an argument for it, and I think on some GW, but I think that lack of deep strike does just hamstring them a little bit, and I'd find that a little bit frustrating compared to what I would want to be doing with those vengeances. So there are your 7 deployments. I hope you've really enjoyed that. So obviously the LGT pods are now available, and it is highly likely that I am playing Archon Skari round 1. So that should be a nice, interesting one. That will be on... it'll be Terraform... I can't remember the name of the map, but it's Dawn of War, but not Dawn of War. It's Step Dawn of War. Sweeping Engagement, that's the one. Be Sweeping Engagement. It's an interesting one. We know what army he's going to be on. We know what army I'm going to be on. It's no shock, right? So Drakari versus Dark Angels. And I think that's going to be a really interesting matchup. I'm really looking forward to it. We might be on stream. If we are, it'll be on UKTC TV. Hopefully we are. I think it'd be quite good fun just to get on the stream. I'm just really looking forward to having a laugh with the guy. Seems like a really nice chap. So it's one of those where you're going into an invitational, you could be a little bit worried that you're going to get someone that's like super sweaty and super serious. And there's nothing wrong with being super sweaty and super serious. That's how some people like to play, like fair play. But it's not how I get the most enjoyment out of the game. And I know that Scar is quite a fun guy, going from what friends that do know him have said. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I'm looking forward to having a bit of banter, having a bit of fun. So I think that's going to be a good laugh. I'm really looking forward to that overall. And then I think it's random in bracket. There's quite a few content creators in my pod. So David Gaylard from Fireside Chat. He's probably favourite to win the pod. He's got, I would say it's between him and Skari, but I think Skari has a little bit less experience on UKTC, although I'm pretty sure he'll have been grinding it as soon as he saw he was in the Invitational. But yeah, I would imagine David probably fancies himself as the winner of that pod, and I don't think there'd be too many people that would disagree with him. Obviously, I'm going to try and upset him, but that's it's my first time. I was just thinking about this recently. This time last year, I was prepping for my first LGT. Now I am prepping for the LGT Invitational, going up against Skari of all people, and I've just found out that I've got a place on the Team Wales Battle of Britain team. So it's super exciting. It's crazy how much time changes. And just I really appreciate everyone that's been along with this journey, and sort of given opinions, given views, supported me on Patreon. It's really nice thinking that people will actually pay money just to hear me talk about toy soldiers. That's crazy. But I really appreciate it. And hopefully I'll just be able to keep bringing you guys quality content. I'm going to have a lot more teams stuff going on. It's going to be a lot more WTC for me as well, because I am really going to push myself to try and make that 8 for the WTC. I've got to try and kind of assess what I want to achieve next season, because last season I decided that I want to try this season. I wanted to make the top 100 UKTC. That should be very achievable, because currently I think I'm 8th or 9th, which is bonkers, and shows you kind of how off the mark I was with the assessment that I made at the end of the last season, or how just positive this season has been in terms of making those step ups, which I'm very appreciative to everyone that supported me on that. But I think my key aim is I really want to get to the WTC, so that's where my head's at. Battle of Britain's going to be interesting, really, really interesting. And to be honest, I'm really excited to go up against the England guys as well, because they are the best team in sort of the British Isles. I would say one of the best teams in Europe, but equally you've got the French just across the border who are incredible. And I know that people are really striving to be like the French. That's another team that I'm really excited to hopefully get to go into, because at the moment obviously they're going to be 10 times better than me. But I want to be playing players like that. It's why I'm so excited to play against Skari, because Team Canada, very, very respected player, very, very experienced. Complete opposite ends of the scale between he and I, even though there's quite a few similarities in that we both do content creation, we're both faction specialists. In my case, he is an actual faction specialist. I've been pissing around with Blood Angels, so it's interesting that this is my first bite of the apple at this level. The only other time I've really sort of had that moment was the shadow round of South Coast where I went up against Manny. But obviously Manny was a good friend of mine, and we knew the outcome of that game because he was playing Daka Daka. So it's a little bit different this time. But super exciting for me. And I hope Scari's looking forward to it. Safe travels if you do watch this, or if anyone is a fan of his, give him my best for the journey. And I'm super excited, really, really excited. If you're going to LGT, come say hi. I'll be hanging around on the Friday and then obviously over the weekend. That's going to be really good fun. But yeah, come chat. I'll be around. I'll probably have a beer in hand at some point, possibly. We'll see. It depends how it's going. But yeah, really, really looking forward to it. Really looking forward to the next season. I'm very excited for all of that stuff. Any questions or any queries, pop them in the comments below. I do check through them all, and then just jump on the Discord because it's way easier for me to keep track with stuff on there. Links to that will be in the description. And remember, most importantly, thanks sponsors, and stay loyal fuckers. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks guys. Bye.